Mike Farrell, Rivals.com. Excited to have Brian Kelly from Notre Dame on. Signing day, not as exciting as the old signing days, but still signing day. In a very good class, top 10 recruiting class here. And I'm going to talk about the class, but I also want to talk about the expectations at Notre Dame and academic restrictions and all that good stuff. But let's break down the class a little bit first. Let's start at quarterback. I mean, you got Tyler Buckner and Ron Paulus. Tyler hasn't played in a long time. So have you been able to see him or get any sort of evaluation of him?
Yeah, again, I think, Mike, as well as anybody in watching these guys, they have a base, they have a platform that they have for, 17, 18 years. There was some tweaking with the delivery. We're not really concerned about that. You take a look at, a number of quarterbacks in the NFL, they have their own distinctive release points. It's like the golf swing a little bit. We're much more interested in, he's got a great base. He's athletic. He's strong. And so that's really what we've seen. And in this off season, he's really done a great job with his body. And so we're just excited to have him here on campus and have him for the spring. And that's really going to be great for us.
Is there any rust? I mean, I know he's throwing every day, but just to miss a senior season, not for injury, just obviously this pandemic just throws a monkey wrench in everything.
Yeah, I think it'll be similar to what we saw with all of our guys where they didn't have spring ball, Mike. There was definitely rust, but these guys are such great athletes. It takes a little bit of a while, for them to get their timing back, but he'll be out here virtually every day in the indoor right across the street here throwing with the receivers. And these guys are so competitive that they'll spend so much time across the street here and work through that in just a matter of weeks.
I like your receiver class. Obviously, if there was one criticism of the offense of Notre Dame this season that you heard from all the talking heads and the pundits is they're not fast enough outside. They don't have the dynamic guys that can get down the field. Lorenzo Styles is one of those dynamic guys. But tell me what you like about this receiving class.
Well, I think it gives us that variety, right? You got Styles, who obviously is a guy that can make you miss after the catch. Then you've got size on the perimeter. Kelsey certainly gives you that kind of size on the outside. Thomas, those are the kind of versatile receivers that we were looking for inside and out. But I think if you also look at Styles, he gives you versatility. He's a dynamic punt returner as well. And we were looking for that impact player that could come in and immediately have that kind of offensive production power.
And you've got Mitchell Evans and Kane Barong at tight end,
Yep.
Looking to keep that tight end tradition going. Obviously, Michael Mayer we liked a lot last year.
Oh, yeah, you should.
But he got so big. I mean,
yeah.
It's hard to see these kids, at the end of their high school career, and then they go off to play spring ball or summer conditioning, and then they're just so much bigger. So Barong is a guy who's not long.
Right.
But again, I know you guys like him, and Mitchell Evans is tall as can be. What do they each bring to the table?
Well, what we loved about Kane was, his athletic ability. He reminded us a lot of. He didn't have some of the spark numbers of a Tommy Tremble, but he was very similar in terms of how he played the position. Caught it, ran, was physical, really liked kind of gritty as a player. Mitchell, look, a lot of his film is at quarterback this year. Just an outstanding athlete, long, athletic. And then you can just kind of say, all right, where does he end up? I recruited Travis Kelsey, and he was a quarterback out of Cleveland Heights.
Yeah.
He ends up as a one of the best tight ends. So you take great prospects like that, Mike, and then you're like, let's just see where it goes. Who knows? He's that kind of athlete.
Well, you got to say that you saw Travis Kelsey coming, right? You have to.
Well, we saw a big physical player. Who knew? Because, we already had his brother, Jason, and we weren't sure whether they were going to make it through the first year because they fought every other down. So we're just happy that it's worked out nicely for them.
Yeah, with the second you said quarterback and Mitchell Evans, I thought of Kelsey immediately. So, and then Logan Diggs has just
Yep.
signed, so you can talk
Yep.
about him, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes, we
and
can.
then Audric Estime, I think I'm pronouncing that right. So a 1-2
That's
punch
correct.
at running back here. Very good players.
Very good players and very different. You know, Audric is physical, has a great burst, and a presence about him that we really liked coming on in his senior year. Really starting to show himself as a physical player in all facets. Where Logan is shifty, athletic. We said, listen, nobody's jumping like him. Maybe Najee Harris has jumped over players like Logan, but Logan's got that shiftiness, can catch the ball coming out of the backfield. And when you're the offensive player of the year in the state of Louisiana at a school like Rummel's, that's saying a lot about your athleticism.
Yeah, and so what we did last time when there was a running back that was under recruited in state and ended up going elsewhere, we made him a high 3-star, and he turned into Travis Etienne. So we're doing the same thing with Logan here, and I think we're gonna, look as stupid. So we'll see. Offensive line, you guys are, arguably O-line the way you've been popping kids into the NFL and superstars. Quentin Nelson's considered arguably the best offensive lineman in all of the NFL. You got some mean ones here. I love Rocco Spindler as just sort of a mean fighter. And then Blake Fisher has really worked on his feet. So tell me about your O-line.
So, you add Caleb to the mix, who's long and athletic. We wanted some size. Caleb gives us the size and length. Fisher's massive, right? I mean, look, in terms of, size and toughness, I think we really fill the bill there in terms of who we are and who we've become on the offensive line. So there's a high bar there. You've already mentioned that, in terms of Ronnie Stanley, Mike McGlinchey, Zach, Quentin. I mean, we're going to have, Eichenberg this year, we're going to have Banks this year. So, there's a pretty good run here. And we think this is going to be an extension of having some similar players here in the future.
D-line, you went 3 defensive ends, but, one of those guys could grow into something else. Actually, 2 of them could. And then you got 1 defensive tackle, Gabe Rubio, who's physically ready to play right away.
Yeah.
Getting after the passer, obviously, is another thing that you've done well. So tell me, which one of these guys is the natural pass rusher that you targeted?
Well, I think Devin, you would say that Devin is a guy that, immediately jumps out at you as a pass rusher. Will's long and developmental. But again, we were looking for guys that we could develop. They're in that mold of, look, Owusu didn't play as a freshman. He's going to be a first rounder. They're like Okwara, who ends up being a second rounder. Khalid Kareem's, the Akwaras, all of these guys were developmental guys. We're in that 3.5-star range on these guys, and we need to develop them. Those are the guys that fit best here at Notre Dame on the defensive line. And that's been really our sweet spot for us in the recruiting and looking for those kind of guys that have the athleticism that can go down and kind of develop for a year or 2, and then we'll bring them up and they're ready to go.
Yeah, and I think we're trying to get ahead of the curve on Prince Colley because he's an extremely athletic guy and super raw. But you've got 2 tremendously athletic linebackers.
We think Colley is a special player. We think he's got some of the traits that are on the high side of being ready. We don't have many guys that are like him that have that twitchy. He is a lot like Okwara. A lot like Jeremiah Owusu-Karamora, and has that twitchiness that could come in maybe and fight for some playing time right out of the gate. So he's a guy that probably stands out in the class that has that kind of ability.
And then a lot of D-backs. And one thing I notice about your D-backs is they're all tall and long. Is that something you wanted to, get better at or continue in your defensive backfield?
Yeah, two things. One, playing a lot more on body coverages. I'm hesitant to say man coverage, but we want to be much more on body. And I think that that's kind of what you're seeing in college, whether it's quarters on man or even if it's cover three on man. You need some length, and you've got to have some length in terms of being able to match up against what you're seeing offenses and playing for the 50-50 ball. So you've got to have some length out there and some athleticism and the ability to play the ball. And that's what you're seeing today in our recruiting in the back end.
Okay, now I get to ask the fun questions. So I got three of them. The first one, Notre Dame's afraid to play in a conference. You're in the ACC this year, and how was that experience?
Wonderful. Great experience for us. It's so difficult playing the independent schedule because you're flying coast to coast. You're getting home at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, because you're playing, late games. To have a 90-minute flight to Raleigh, Durham, and getting home at a decent hour. That was really nice. So we enjoyed being in the conference, but independent is who we've been historically and through our tradition. Look, I'll be honest with you. A lot of this is tied to, what do the contracts and television look like for us, down the road? Our NBC contract comes up in a couple of years. Does expansion happen? So, we've got our ear to the ground. I mean, we're listening, and we're going to obviously react to what happens, but we're going to go back to being independent, but we're going to be smart and making sure we look at everything as well.
The other thing, obviously Notre Dame has so many haters, so I'm going to mention hater stuff. But Notre Dame gets to the playoff, but then they can't hang because they don't have the talent. How do you respond to like that when it's so difficult to get into the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, we won 10 games. We went undefeated. We lost in the conference championship to a pretty good Clemson football team. We beat them during the year, and their backup quarterback is probably as good as the top 5 quarterbacks in the country. So we've got nothing to apologize for being in the playoffs. And we played Alabama better than anybody in the country. So we kept them to 8 possessions and 31 points. Nobody else did that. So we can't really respond to what the haters have to say about it. We can respond to what we did on the field. And, we put a pretty good football team on the field and deserve to be there.
And so somebody told me it was last year, the year before, you were quoted as saying that you wanted top 5 recruiting classes. And somebody asked me if that's possible at Notre Dame. So this is where the academic discussion comes in. And I said it wasn't in this day and age with your academic restrictions. Tell me about the playing field. Whether fair or unfair, what are your thoughts on the playing field? Because it's so different.
Yeah, and I've been asked a lot about that. Top 5 to us, we weren't quoting top 5 as it relates to what you guys consider top 5. We have our own way of determining top 5. I think 4 out of the last 5 years, we've been a top 10 as Rivals, 24/7, ESPN, the way you guys put it together. But we have another way because we have to factor other things into that. And so we were talking about how we factored in what we considered to be a top 5 recruiting class. And that means getting quality talent, guys that we put on the field and show that at the end of the year. So for example, 2 out of the last 5 years, we finished in the top 5 in the AP. So we were able to take the talent that we recruited and we finished in the top 5 in the AP in 2 out of the last 3 years. So that's really what we're talking about relative to recruiting talent, the kind of talent that gets you the kind of teams necessary to finish in the top 5 as it relates to polls and things of that nature.
Do you have discussions at Notre Dame regarding the academic restrictions and some attempted leniency when you're comparing yourself to schools that don't have the same standards and can get anybody in?
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's a non-starter as it relates to this position at Notre Dame. And I knew when I took the job that One of the things that's not going to change is who can succeed here academically and who can't. And you have to be committed to sitting in a classroom with all 5-star academics. They all are 5 stars, every single one of them. And if you're not committed, just like if you're not committed as a 5-star athlete to go to a camp with 5 stars, if you're a 1-star and you go to the 5-star camp as an athlete, you're going to get run out of town. It's the same thing. If you're a 1-star academic and you go into a 5-star academic environment, you're going to get run out of town. So I just flip that scenario in terms of what we have to recruit to. We have to recruit to, if you're a 3-star academic, you better have the will and desire to want to go to work every day at Notre Dame. And so that's why, we recruit to a special kid that wants a degree to Notre Dame.
Is it fair?
Well, is it a level playing field? Yes and no. We get a special kid that we love here at Notre Dame that we love to coach. And it's our choice and it's our business plan that we think, and we've shown in 2 out of the last 3 years that we could get to the national playoffs. Look, that Alabama team, it could have beaten anybody. I mean, and the two Alabama teams that I played and the Clemson team I played, those teams were ridiculous. I think I'm going to get a break the next time we get to the playoffs.
Maybe.
And I'm going to put a team together that keeps getting better. And we're going to have a chance to win a national championship. I'm dumb enough and Irish enough that I think I can do that.
Stubborn is the way to go. I'm Irish as well. So you got to keep getting in there and then just taking your shot. And the last thing I'll ask you about the portal. So the portal doesn't affect Notre Dame as much because it's a 40-year decision versus a 4-year decision. Is that a truthful statement?
Yeah, those kids that are transferring already have their degree. They're going to get their degree in 3 years and then have 2 seasons of competition left. So, for the portal, we're not worried about that. Those kids have done their job. They came to Notre Dame, they got their degree. And if they're not getting the kind of player time they want, then they should go find a place where they want to go play. And we give them all that they can to find another landing spot for them. Nobody's leaving here early because they didn't play. They came here knowing that they want to get a degree and play for a championship. And after they get their degree, if they want to transfer and move on, we're going to help them 100% of the time.
That's your office, right?
Yes, sir.
Is that overlooking the field?
Yes.
Ooh, that's nice. Okay. So now I see why there's no need to go anyplace but Notre Dame. So I appreciate your time. Tremendous recruiting class, top 10. Go to blueandgold.com on Rivals for more on Brian Kelly and his efforts in 2022 and beyond. Congratulations on another great recruiting year, Coach.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
Thanks.